So you go from that to 2002, I think it is. You enroll in the Navy, and what you mentioned earlier is your dad was on the board of World Trade Center. He knew
Yeah.
the designer or the engineer
Architect.
and architect
Yeah.
of the World Trade Center.
Yeah.
9/11 drove the decision to join the Navy, or completely unrelated.
No, it was completely unrelated. I had ended up getting involved in a deal with a drug dealer that went bad. Sold them a number of phones that was supposed to stay on for 90 days. They only stayed on for 2 weeks. He had already flipped the phone, so if I sold him the phone for 500, he in turn sold the phone for $1,000. So he owed a lot of people money, and they were upset. So he threatened my life. My mom's life was threatened. Huge wake up call for me. That's when I decided, hey, I'm not doing this anymore. And tried to sell the record company. That didn't work itself out. And then finally, in 2002, that's when I kind of looked at my life and I saw that my life hadn't amounted to anything. And I realized that if I stay in the Bronx, I'm going to either end up dead or in prison, because there were people who were doing the same things that I was doing and they were ending up in federal prison. And so it was more self-preservation. It wasn't about, hey, let me join the military after an act of war, 9/11, or any of that stuff. Let me just join the military, because if I don't, I'm going to end up dead. And so I went to go join, and then the recruiter, she ran my background, and she found out that I had 2 warrants out for my arrest, which I didn't know. I had a warrant in New Jersey and I had a warrant in New York. I was I was petrified, because at this point I didn't know what the warrants were for. So at the time, and so I thought it was for the stuff that I was doing, and as it related to the phones. And got up, got ready to run out of the office, and she stopped me right before I got out. Right before I crossed the threshold, and she said, "Hey, where you going?" I said, "I'm getting out of here." She said, "You have a suit?" I said, "No." She asked me if I had a collared shirt and some nice pants. I said, "I'm sure I could find something." And she told me to come back tomorrow. And I said, "For what?" She snapped at me and said, "Just come back tomorrow, okay?" And growing up in the streets of the Bronx, especially when I was hustling, I had to learn how to read people. And that would later serve me well. And when I got into human intelligence, and from her response and reaction and the way she had been for the last hour I was in her office, I was able to read that whatever it was that she was going to do for me, it was going to be good. I didn't know exactly what it was going to be, but I knew that it would be good. And so I came back the next day, and she took me to both judges. She had on her dress uniform and took me to both judges, to judge in New Jersey, judge in New York, advocate on my behalf. She kind of used the 9/11 as a way to get me in. She said, "Hey, he's trying to join the Navy after an act of war. 9/11 took place 9 months earlier, and I think you should give him a shot, because he can't join the military with warrants or a record." And the first judge expunged my record. I just had to pay court fees and court fines. And the second judge, who he was the courthouse was coincidentally blocks away from ground zero. So there was a lot of empathy there. He expunged my record, and then that was kind of how, and then she fudged the paperwork to sneak me into the Navy, and that's kind of how it all happened. So it was all about self-preservation.
So when you get in, do you go straight to SEAL training, or you go to the regular Navy first?
Yeah, I go to the regular Navy first. I wasn't qualified academically. I didn't have the ASVAB scores, and I couldn't swim, and I was super skinny. So I went to Naval Hospital Camp Pendleton first. I did a year there, and as soon as I got there, I just trained hard. I didn't have a car, so I'd run 3 miles uphill to the pool, jump in the shallow end, try to figure it out, run 3 miles back. I got an ASVAB for Dummies book, which is like an SAT book, and I studied that book religiously. And then I watched a Buds 234 documentary and saw how the guys worked out, and I built my workout plans around what they did. And within a year of checking into the command, I was checking out and on my way to SEAL training. So it was a year process.
What was training like?
Buds, it sucked. I mean, it sucked. And being I couldn't get away with anything, because less than 1% of Navy SEALs are African American. And then when every class that I had been in, I'm like one of three African Americans in the class, and so I couldn't get away with anything. One, two, so I stood out like a sore thumb. And then on top of that, the cold water, I had no body fat. So when I'm in the ocean, I'm freezing. At the end of every 2 mile time ocean swim, I'm either borderline hypothermic or hypothermic. So that sucked. And it's a brutal process, man. And it has to be, because they're trying to create warriors who would be able to go in any situation, outnumbered, outgunned, and still get the job done. And so it's absolutely necessary, and it has to be tough. I mean, the attrition rate is anywhere between 80 and 90%. The class I graduated with started with 270, 29 of us finished. And that's just the way it is every class. So it sucked. It sucked bad, but it was necessary.
I've talked to a lot of SEALs about this. What do you think about all the public pressure to make it softer, to basically
I hate
water it down?
I hate it. I think it's all political for diversity's sake. I say that in air quotes. I think, that's a job where you have to have a person in it that's qualified. You know what I mean? And it's not a job where you can water it down and to get numbers in or to meet a quota. Otherwise, you're going to create casualties. I will say that the SEAL teams, BUDS training, and in the SEAL teams, that was the first community that I felt like I was a part of that didn't care at all, whether I was black or white. They didn't care. All they cared about was, can you do your job? Can you perform? And if you can't perform, you're out of here. If you can perform, then you stay in. And I hate the idea of people trying to, politicians, and the majority of people who are trying to water it down, change it, are people who didn't serve or will have never served, not just in the military, but in special operations. So it's easy to armchair quarterback and say, why aren't there enough of this group or that group in there? Why aren't there enough blacks in there? Why aren't there enough women and this and that? And how about you go through training first and then you tell me why?
Well, and I think what many people don't realize, I was in the regular Army, and special operations is even that on steroids, is the trust that a team needs, right? And so to your point, it's not only can you do your job, in training, but I'm assuming when you're kicking in a door in Iraq or Afghanistan, you need to know that the person next to you can shoot straight, can move, can communicate, has your back, is going to not fucking run out of the building the first time someone shoots back. Like all these different things, that trust and that confidence and competence that comes with having people who've gone through the training is a huge piece. Like the psychological component is really important.
100%. It's total buy-in. I like the example you used was perfect. When I go into it, when I was doing direct action missions, downrange, I won't mention the countries that I operated in, but when I was doing DA missions and we went, I was a point first man in, a second man in. I knew if I was first man in, the guy behind me is going to cover my corner, be the second man in, right behind me, covering down the section that I can't see. I didn't have to worry about, is he going to, after I go in, is he going to really clear his corner, or am I going to get shot in the back by somebody who's hiding in the corner? I knew that he was going to do what he was going to do. And even more than that, I knew that when poop hit the fan, like when things were out of control, that dude was not going to quit it. Because it's not just about the fear of going in and somebody running out because they're scared of getting shot at. It's more about, half your platoon has been shot up, or the birds crashed, or you've been on an op for freaking 8 hours and it's 130 degrees out. It was just supposed to be a quick snatch and grab. And that each guy is still going to give 110%. That each guy is not even paying attention to the fact that he might have been shot and bleeding out. I mean, case in point, lone survivor. That's a great case study right there. That proves why we do what we do, because those guys, Marcus and Axel and Murph and those guys, they were in the middle of a storm and they kept on fighting. They weren't fighting for themselves. They kept on fighting for the guy to their right, and they left outnumbered, shot up, guy died, another guy died, still fighting for each other. And that perseverance, that no quit attitude in the face of ominous, absolute distress, death, you name it. You can only get that out of the program that we come out of. And so yeah, man.
Well, 100%. I think a big part of it too is you can't recreate that scenario or other types of scenarios in training, but you sure can put people through a lot of pain, right? Oh, yeah. and kind of test them mentally. And so how much of the training did you feel was physical versus mental?
It's all mental. In my opinion, every guy that shows up to training physically has what it takes to be there and make it. Otherwise, you want to get in. You got to pass like a 500-yard swim, push-ups, sit-ups, pull up certain numbers, all that other stuff. And you can't just pass it. You have to score what's called competitive scores. And then you got to take a physical examination and a psychological, all this stuff. So every single person that shows up has what it takes physically. The question now becomes who has what it takes mentally. All the instructors are doing, and this is what we did on the Special Forces Fox show, and this is what I do when I work with corporations and pro athletes. All we're doing is taking physical tools to drive home intellectual points. We're using the physical to challenge them mentally. And that's what it's about at the end of the day. So for me, my personal opinion, it's 90% mental, 10% physical. I mean, and the 10% physical, I mean, they're just using that 10% to push that 90% within your psyche and your brain.
So one of the things I hear people who've never served in the military before, never gone overseas or anything like that, they'll talk about fear and how fear really is this thing that obviously soldiers don't get scared, right? Obviously SEALs don't get scared. Talk a little bit about fear, whether you ever were scared, when you're out in the field or operating on missions, and whether that was something that could be debilitating or actually something that you could use to your advantage and kind of spur yourself into action.
Yeah, I think fear is good. Fear is a good thing because it keeps you from doing the wrong thing, in my opinion. My greatest fear when going on missions, it wasn't death. I gave up the fear of death the moment I raised my hand and said, I'll join the military. And then even more so when I freaking said, I'm going to go to Buzz. And then even more so when I said, I'm going to be a frogman, because I knew that I could die at any moment. And you have to give up that fear of death. My greatest fear was doing something or not doing something that would lead to the serious injury or death of my teammate. That was my fear. And that fear was good because it really helped focus me on doing the right things. As I said, I was a medic, but I was also a HUMINT guy, which stands for human intelligence. And so I got to go to different intelligence schools, and I had to learn how to run sources and do all that cool stuff, tradecraft, all that cool stuff. And that's kind of where Chameleon kind of came out of. And so I was building the intelligence packages that would lead to us going on direct action missions. And so I had to really vet my information with my sources and against other information and double vet it and check it because my fear was getting a piece of information, or maybe I'm in a meeting with a source and I'm not paying attention to all the telltale signs. Is he lying to me? Is he just trying to send me to a place where me and my team go into the building and then somebody clacks off a bomb and we're all dead? I had to focus even more so. And that focus came out of that fear of leading my teammates into a situation that's going to kill them. Right. And so fear is good, and it was always good. But again, it was more so the fear of doing something or not doing something that would hurt or lead to the death of my teammates. And that's something that, when I'm talking to entrepreneurs and CEOs of companies, that's something that I always preach. I said, utilize that fear, but don't utilize it in a selfish way. Think about your employees. Think about your subordinates. Think about, okay, is this decision going to be a decision that is not going to just hurt me, but it's going to hurt my teammates? And in return, by hurting my teammates, hurt my bottom line. One thing I always try to tell leaders is that it's the importance of taking a genuine interest in your people. Because if you take a genuine interest in them, not just see them as a stepping stone or a sled dog or whatever the tag we put on it, your people are going to want, they're going to want to meet the standard. They're going to want to blow past the standard. They're going to want to be willing to run through walls. And that was something I learned in the SEAL teams. I had an OIC who just really took a genuine interest in us. And so we wanted to perform beyond the standard. It wasn't about him prying into our personal business. It was about him letting us know, hey, I care about you. What's going on? How's your day? How's things back at the family? What can I do to support you? What can I do to help make your job easier? And in doing all of those things and actually caring about us, we wanted to work 10 times harder. And when you have that fear of disappointing your subordinates or disappointing your teammates, it's going to lead to you making the right decisions, so that when and in making the right decisions, it's just going to create this cycle of success within your team, within your organization. And so fear is good.